What is going on, everyone? This is Zach from Clutch Crew Sports, back with another 2022 college football season preview video. I've already gone over half of the Pac-12 conference. I talked about the North teams and how I think they will finish in the standings this year, and now I'm going to move on and talk about the six South teams, which are UCLA, USC, Colorado, both Arizona and Arizona State, and Utah. So those are the six teams that I'm going to be ranking in today's episode, and these are my projections based on what I think will happen this season. So let's get started and start with the number 6 team that I have in the Pac-12 South, and that's going to be Arizona. Now, Arizona last year, you can see just 1-8 in the conference, 1-11 overall, so they had a very bad season. I believe they even lost last year to Northern Arizona, so that just kind of tells you how bad of a season it was for them. However, I do think they are sort of on the rise, and I'll get to that a little bit later, but they're scheduled. They're not expected to be competitive this year. Most people have them at the bottom of the Pac-12, or there's another team that possibly in the South could be worse than Arizona, but you can see last year they were dead last complete in the conference. So there's not many games on this schedule that you look at and expect them to win. I think, just for fun, their game of the year is just going to be their rivalry game, home against Arizona State. Arizona State could go any direction this year, so if they somehow have a bad year, I still think they should beat Arizona, but at least that's one that could make the season a little bit better if they were to upset Arizona State and win that rivalry game. Now, in 2021, they were last in the recruit rankings out of the Pac-12 South teams, so they are at a disadvantage this year. However, they are set up for success for the future. In 2023, they had a top 30 national recruit class, so it also happened to be their best recruiting class ever as a school, which is surprising since they just won one game last year. But really, this team is just trying to recover right now from Kevin Sumlin, the terrible transfer moves that he made, and the poor recruit rankings that they've had. I mean, you can see here, 6th out of these teams, and then just in general, they've just been, a really bad team these last few years. So trying to recover from that, build up the recruit rankings. Now, I don't think this is sustainable, this great recruiting class that they had in 2023, if they don't start backing it up with some wins. So they need to really, these next few years, win some games, have some upsets, beat Arizona State, to keep those good recruits coming in and, transfer players as well. That's going to be the key for Arizona long term. Like, this season's not, no expectations, but moving forward, it's a team that might have some expectations. Their key player is going to be Jaden DeLora, the former Washington State quarterback. So it's interesting, played at Washington State, staying in the same conference here, going to Arizona. And he was the freshman of the year in 2021. So they're getting a guy who was really good as a freshman in this conference, and they're hoping that he can bring the success he had at Washington State over to Arizona. Now, at number 5, I've got Colorado. This is the team I previously alluded to that I could easily see them finishing below Arizona. I just have them one notch ahead in the South. Now, they were 3-6 in the conference last year, just 4 wins on the season, and they were 9th in the Pac-12. So, it's a familiar sight to see the Buffalo down here, number 5th in the South. And looking at their schedule, I've highlighted their key game, home against Cal. Honestly, too, the Arizona game could decide who is at the cellar of the Pac-12, but if they, can win that game, if they can also beat Cal at home, I think that'd be big for them. But the rest of their schedule is pretty tough, honestly. TCU, they got to go at Minnesota. There's some non-conference games. They also have to go at Oregon State, at USC, and at Washington. Those aren't favorable. And then their home games aren't much better either. So it doesn't look like it's going to be a bowl season for Colorado. I don't expect that. 4 wins last year. It's not a team that got better either. They were 5th out of these 6 teams in the 2021 recruit ranking. So, not bringing in, keep, great players, 5 stars, 4 stars, that sort of stuff. But really what stood out to me for Colorado is just how much they lost in the transfer portal. Usually I've been talking about these teams, picking up key players from the transfer portal, a quarterback from another team or star wide receiver, star running back, something like that. But Colorado, they lost 23 players to the transfer portal, including like both their top cornerbacks, their leading rusher. They kept their quarterback, but a lot of major players from this team left to go elsewhere. So, and they didn't really, balance it out by bringing in a ton either. They just brought in like 5 notable transfers. So, it's a young team, and it's a team that last year they were bad, and now you're seeing an exodus of players. So it could be a turning point season for Colorado. If they struggle again this year, things could just keep getting worse, whereas Arizona, it seems like things could be getting better. I didn't single out a specific key player for the Buffalo, but I said their whole offensive line is key because they were just terrible last year. They were one of the worst offensive lines in college football. They gave up the most sacks in the conference, so this offensive line needs to get better if Colorado's got any shot of pulling off some upsets this year. Now, at number 4, I've got Arizona State, which is a real interesting team to watch this year. They were 8-5 overall, 6-3 in the conference last year, finishing 4th and 3rd in the Pac-12 South. So, kind of a middle of the pack Pac-12 team. I can't believe I just said that. But, anyways, I've got their key game on their schedule, home against Washington, is I think a good test for them, 2 evenly matched teams in my opinion. And also too, this is their only home game pretty much in the entire month of October. They've got at USC, and then after the Washington game, they've got at Stanford, at Colorado. They should win those 2 road games after Washington, but it's still not good to be on the road so much. They only play, in fact, a total of 5 home games, which is not that many this year. 2 of them are against Northern Arizona and Eastern Michigan. So they've only got home games against Washington, Utah, UCLA, and Oregon State. Actually, that's 6. But either way, those road games in the middle of the schedule could be a killer for them. But that home game against Washington, that's going to be, I think, a big one for them. Now, this is an interesting team because they were 4th out of these 6 teams in the 2021 recruit rankings, but right now they are just in turmoil. They're one of these schools that has NCAA investigations going on, and it could be bad, if they, rule that they were cheating and with the recruit rules and stuff like that. Then they could see a punishment, and I think that would just set this program back even more. They've already had a pretty big exodus, not as bad as Colorado, like I just mentioned, but a lot of coaches included. Coaches and players are fleeing Arizona State just because they don't want to be associated with this mess if it, comes out to be a mess. So Arizona State right now, Herm Edwards definitely on the hot seat. Fans are starting to get restless. I mean, they had some momentum in his early years at Arizona State. There's no denying that, but they're starting to go backwards now. So we could have seen Arizona State at their peak already, which is not good for them. Now, their key player is going to be Emory Jones, the Florida transfer, and he's a guy I'm pretty familiar with. Played for Florida last year. He's a dual threat quarterback, so expect a lot of QB runs out of this offense and, RPOs, that sort of stuff. But I think he's pretty good. He's not going to I don't see Arizona State being a dark horse team that wins this conference, but I think he's good enough to get them some wins like they were last year, competitive. But overall, I do have them fourth, so, it's I just think there's too much dysfunction and stuff going on at this school. They're seeing, good players leaving. Them and Arizona are kind of going in opposite directions, in my opinion, even though Arizona State's the better team right now. Now at third, I've got UCLA. So I've still got UCLA and then the top two, USC and Utah, to rank. But UCLA comes in at number 3. They were also third in the conference, second in the South last year, with an 8-4 overall record, 6-3 in the conference. And they had that early season win against LSU last year, and then they followed it up with a disappointing loss. I can't remember who it was, but it was a disappointing loss. I think Fresno State. But UCLA, obviously they're going to the Big Ten in a few years, so this is one of their final years in the Pac-12. We'll see if they can win a Pac-12 championship. It's been a long time since they have. But to me, looking at their schedule, the key game's going to be home against Utah on October 8th. Utah's a good team. They get them at home, though, which is important because they have to play other strong teams like Oregon. They got to go on the road. So getting Utah at home is key. And then they're home against USC, but that's two teams in the same city. So that's gonna be a home game, but not super great as far as fans. But Utah, if they could pull off that upset, that'd be huge for them. They were second out of these 6 teams in the 2021 recruit rankings. And in my opinion, they need to start using the NIL opportunities to recruit better. They were kind of slow to get on board with the NIL stuff, and it set them back a little bit compared to some other schools. But it seems like they are starting to get it going with the NIL money. I mean, they're in a major market in Los Angeles. There's no reason why they shouldn't be, competing. They're never going to be on the same level as USC. But, then they could easily take a step up compared to how they've been. They've just been a mediocre team the past few years. They'll have some ups, but they never really get to the, important games at the end of the year. So they're also, too, their defense has to be better. Actually, the bright spot of some of these teams I mentioned before, like Colorado, Arizona State, they actually had okay defenses. Their defenses were actually keeping them in games. UCLA's got to get better on defense. And their key player is going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson. That's a name right there. But he's a rare player. I mean, I don't think we'll ever really see this again. But he's a 5th-year starting quarterback now for them. Been at UCLA his whole time. So with the transfer portal, with players going to the pros and moving around, so much movement right now in college football, it's rare that you see a guy stick with a team for 5 years. So he's got definitely the experience for UCLA, and I think their fans are really hoping that this is the year. They're seen as like a dark horse in this conference, that they could Chip Kelly could lead them to their best season they've had under him. But personally, I think they're going to have a good year. I just think that there's some better teams right now in this conference, and they got to get more fan attendance. That's another thing. This picture here was not a good look, and that hurts their recruit status when you have this giant stadium that they're playing in and in the Rose Bowl, and it just looks so empty. It's a bad look. So UCLA gotta bring more excitement, give the fans a better reason to drive through that LA traffic to go to these games. And speaking of LA, their other college football team, USC, I've got them ranked 2nd this year in the Pac-12 South. They are the betting favorites, actually, 2-1. So, a lot of people think USC is going to win this conference, before they go off and join the Big Ten. But I don't see them winning it. I don't see them even winning the South. I think they're going to be very good. They start the season with Rice, Stanford, Fresno State. Those should all be wins. The Oregon State game on the road is going to be tough. I think that's a upset alert. But then after that, Arizona State and Washington State should be wins. Washington State, they get at home too, which is nice for them. Utah is going to be tough. That's going to be a good game, hopefully. And then they play UCLA at the end of the year. I've got that as their key game, just because there's a possibility like Utah, they mess up and lose to Stanford or something, and then USC's got one conference. They lost to Utah, or you never know how things are going to be. UCLA could be up there as well. So the end of the season, that game against UCLA could have big implications on who wins the South and who gets to go to the conference championship game. But last year they weren't very good, so I'm predicting a big step up. They were just 4-8 last year. Fired their coach, obviously. We'll talk about that. So with USC, as you would expect, first out of the 6 teams with the recruit rankings. Very good at recruiting, just they haven't put the results together on the field. And there obviously is a lot of excitement and stuff going on. This is why they're the betting favorites. It's not just because they're a big name. It's because of who they've brought in. Lincoln Riley has had a lot of success at Oklahoma, and he's bringing with him Caleb Williams, who looked really good at Oklahoma last year once he started midway through the season. So these 2 guys from Oklahoma now, they've never played in the Pac-12 before, so I think they're at a disadvantage as far as that goes. That's why I think it could be a few years before USC wins the Pac-12, but by then they're going to be in the Big Ten anyways. So I think they need to right now balance recruiting and winning. Obviously, you want to win at all costs, but they need to start recruiting these 5 stars, get the number 1 quarterback in the country in high school. Arch Manning's already made his decision, but the next wave, you want to get the number 1 guy. And Lincoln Riley is definitely a quarterback coach, so they should have no problem recruiting, but they also have to balance that with winning too. You can't just be recruiting all these players and not winning games. So you could say Caleb Williams is their key player, but Jordan Addison, another transfer from Pitt, he is seen as the top wide receiver in college this year. He could be the first receiver drafted very highly in the NFL draft. So watching, a great quarterback and a great receiver, that's going to be huge. How well do they do? 2 guys, an Oklahoma guy and a Pitt guy playing in USC. So there's a lot of change going on here. That's why I just don't see them winning this early like other people do. And at number 1, I've got Utah, the defending champs of the Pac-12, the South, and the Pac-12 as a whole. They finally won the conference. 10-4 last year, but they were 8-1 in the conference. Now, if they want to have a playoff sort of run this year, they're probably going to have to go undefeated. With the way the Pac-12 is as a conference, I really like this conference. Actually, doing research on these teams, I'm excited to see how the season goes. I'm definitely going to be watching a lot of these games, but they're going to have to go undefeated. Now, they play San Diego State at Florida as their major games out of conference, which are both winnable. At Florida will be tough, going to the Swamp, but, good teams, they have to win these games on the road. So their big game I've got highlighted is home against USC. That should be a game with star power in it on USC. We'll see how Utah matches up with them in October 15th. That'll be a fun one to watch. Now, they were 3rd out of these 6 teams in 2021 recruit-wise, so they're not at the top, but they're obviously recruiting good players. And for them, stability is key here. For so many years, they were the team that was trying to get to the top. They were the underdogs, trying to knock off the big schools. But now they're actually here. They've been good for a while now, but maintaining this first place status is huge for them, in my opinion. Especially, finding out what happens with the rest of the Pac-12 for the future. They don't want to be left behind in a bad conference, so to say. So no matter what happens, they want to keep this momentum up to set themselves up in whatever conference is best for them going forward. Cam Rising is their key player, quarterback. Was very good last year. You want to see him take another step up. Utah, very balanced offense last year, almost the same amount of passing yards as rushing yards. They've always been, it feels like, a quarterback away from being good. Always been a very good defensive team, very good running the football. Cam Rising as a quarterback really, was very good for them. In my opinion, why they won the conference. He's got to be just as good as he was last year or better to win this again. So Cam Rising's going to be the player to watch. And Kyle Whittingham, he is like the grandfather of this conference now. He's got, the most experience, a lot of first-time head coaches, new head coaches, or coaches on the hot seat that have been there a little while, like, Herm Edwards. So, I give coaching the major advantage to Utah here just because, Whittingham's been with this program for so long now. It's important to have that stability. So it's another reason why I think Utah wins the Pac-12 in general, the Pac-12 North and South. I think they're conference champions. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who do you think wins the Pac-12 this year? How do you think USC does? Do they rise to the expectations that everybody has for them? Do they have another very bad year like last year? What do you think about UCLA as a dark horse? How does Arizona State do? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And until then, guys, remember, be clutch.